Good evening. Welcome to the Missoula League of Women Voters City Council Candidates Forum. This evening's forum is co-sponsored by the Missoula League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women. My name is Nancy Maxson, and I sit on the board of directors for the Missoula League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We do not support any individual candidates. We do voter service, voter education activities, such as tonight's forum. This evening, the 10 candidates running for Missoula City Council will have the opportunity to respond to questions and engage in discussion. Our candidates this evening are, from Ward 1, Lois Herbig and Perry LaCour. From Ward 2, Jim McGrath. Mr. McGrath is the incumbent and running unopposed. Chris Gingerelli from Ward 3. Ms. Gingerelli is also the incumbent and running unopposed. From Ward 4, we have Mert Charney and Larry Anderson. In Ward 5, Curtis Horton is the incumbent and his opponent is Scott Morgan. And in Ward 6, we have Andy Sponseller and Robert Kelly. The Missoula League of Women Voters has prepared some questions for the candidates. We will also be taking questions from the audience here in the City Council chamber and from our MCAT viewing audience. If you are at home and have a question for the candidates, you may call 523-4640 with your questions. That number again is 523-4640. Our City Council audience members may write their questions on the cards provided and pass them to an usher. The questions will be screened for duplication. Please indicate if you would like us to read your name with your question. To begin our forum, I'd like to ask all of our candidates what special talents, skills, and experience they can bring to the City Council. We'd like to begin with Ward 1. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and we'll begin with Ms. Herbig.
Thank you. I've long been involved with things in the Missoula, having served on many committees since, over the years. I've been here for about 50, 60 years. And I did have 8 years experience on the council during the 80s, so I feel that I can hit the ground running. A lot of the problems are pretty much the same as what we had in the 80s, excepting they're larger. And I think the problems are a result of growth. I see a pyramid, and growth is at the top of the pyramid. It affects housing, and it affects air, water, and quality, and human rights. And I would like to be able to work on some of these problems that are affecting our city. I have a reputation of being accessible, and I not only am accessible, but I respond to people. and I care about what the people in the community think. Their opinions are very important to government. The people are the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herbig. Ms. LaCour?
The reasons that I felt committed to take on the responsibility, and I do see City Council as a major responsibility, is because of the involvement that I've had over the years with the Growth Management Task Force, with rattlesnake issues. As a newly annexed area, many of us were faced with major concerns that we had never had before. So I feel that by being in the trenches as a neighborhood volunteer, that I could stay in the trenches a little farther and help with the policy making. My experience doesn't just go with growth management. I've been on the Affordable Housing Task Force, as well as various other committees, transportation planning. These are the growth issues in Missoula, and it's sad that we have had to wait until it's almost too late to make those decisions, but I want to help make those decisions for our future. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
Thanks. For the record, I'm not actually an incumbent yet. I'm running unopposed currently, so, and since no one has filed or asked to run as a write-in, I'm probably going to get elected. And I anticipate sitting in this seat sooner than the January 1st date, because Kelly Rosenleaf will be taking a job as the city grants administrator, which is a good thing for the city, and she will be resigning, and I'll be asked to step into her seat in December. I've had 10 years or more of community activity and political activity as a neighborhood activist in my neighborhood in Ward 2 and citywide in various political things, including boards such as the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Board that I was recently chair of. And I have been just basically a city politics wonk for about 10 years, and this is the arena in which I've chosen to work, and I'm happy to be able to serve. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Gingerelli?
Thank you. Talent, skills, and experience. I've lived in Missoula nearly 20 years. I've been on the city council for the past 4. Prior to that, I put in about 10 years, 10 to 12 years of community experience. I served for 5 years on the health board, have done work with the Clark Fork Coalition, have served on many different community agencies and organizations prior to becoming a council member. I guess in terms of my skills, I feel I'm a very good listener. I'm a good communicator. I really like to communicate, have a two-way communication with my constituents. A large portion of what I like about this job is dealing with my constituents and really listening to them and getting feedback. By profession, I'm a teacher. I have experience in graduate work and counseling, so I think probably communication is my strongest suit, and just working hard. Thank you.
Thank you. Now in Ward 4, Mr. Anderson, what special skills, talents, and experience can you bring to City Council?
From 1986 up to 1989, I was what is now referred to as the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Missoula. So I do have quite a bit of experience in knowing how government runs and how it should run. And for the last 5 years, I've been in business for myself as a small businessman. I feel that business people have a lot to offer in the way of finding solutions to problems, and also in trying to help the city solve its problems, since they are intimately involved in providing tax dollars, jobs. I think they're aware on a day-to-day basis of how to deal with budgets. And I think that experience will help me as a member of the City Council to deal with the problems that we're facing in the future. I think the local experience, my community involvement, and my knowledge of local government will help me. So that's basically where I am right now.
Thank you. Mr. Charney?
Yes, I'm a graduate of the University of Minnesota, a Korean War veteran, and a member of the associated, the ARP. I'm a former, I presently serve on the Missoula County Democratic Central Committee, and I'm a former mayor of a capital city in Juneau, Alaska. I'm a former budget director for the state of Alaska. I'm a former executive director of the Alaska legislature for 9 years. Budgets are my specialty, having been a state budget director and formulating budgets at the city level. I'm kind of the newcomer to the block here in Missoula. Been here about 2.5 years is all. I want to point out that I was elected mayor of Juneau when I had been in Juneau only 3 years. So my experience in government, local government, writing municipal codes, supervising writing of municipal codes, qualify me, I think, to serve on Missoula City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
I'm a University of Montana double major honors graduate, 1991, non-traditional student. That meant that I kept going to school long after most people have given it up. My strength on the city council the past 4 years has developed into being the person that gets things done. Once a specific area has been identified and a specific direction has been identified, often I'm the one the council throws in to carry that through to a conclusion. Relocating the Mountain Line buses in a central downtown location, which would serve St. Pat's, the federal building, City Hall, county building. I'm also the one that spent the past 2 years working to bring animal control out from under the health department so that we could get better response within the urban area. They're expected to become their own department. Their budget is currently segregated out. It was Chris and I on the council that pushed the Air Quality Board, the Health Board, to implement the wood stove regs.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Mr. Morgan.
Planning for growth management is one of the main problems that faces the council at this point. I am, by profession, a planner under contract at the moment to write the strategic plan for a public health department of 3,000 employees. I think those skills will stand me in good stead. The city is also working on streamlining its provision of services through computerization is one of the ways. I spend my whole day at the computer working on document preparation, spreadsheets, databases as a financial planner and manager and as the administrator of the Montana Alternatives to Violence Project. Finally, communication is a major preoccupation at the council, communication between the citizens and the council and the council and the citizens. And some people would say there are even problems with communication within the council. I have a degree in communication from an MA from the University of Montana that should help. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ward 6, Mr. Kelly, what special talent, skills, and experience could you bring to the City Council?
Well, I'm know just about half the town. And I belong to quite a few organizations. I've got a bachelor's degree in math and graduate work in mathematics and sociology. I've also worked as an engineer for the government and held on a lot of occupations. I have an interest mainly in helping the city, or at least trying to. And I promise that I will not make things any worse. That pretty much covers it, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Mr. Sponzeller.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've been in business for the last 13 years here in Missoula, and I think that's one of the primary qualifications that I have. I've had to develop policy for my business. I have to figure out what works and what doesn't. Press the button. Should I start over? I've got several qualifications, and I think that being in business is one of the most important ones. I've had to make policy decisions for my business. I've learned what works and what doesn't, and I think I've learned to be fiscally prudent as well. I spent a lot of time in the community as an activist and worked on many issues of community importance and need. I've worked with Big Brothers and Sisters, co-founder of Save Open Space, and formerly a member of the Affordable Housing Working Group and the Open Space Advisory Committee. I'd just like to close and say that I think government is legitimate, and I'm very eager to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I ask our second question, I'd like to remind our MCAT viewing audience that if they do have questions, they can call 523-4640 with their questions, and that they should indicate whether or not they would like to have their name read with the question. Now for our second question. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to respond to this question. The responses to the questionnaire the Missoula stakeholders sent to Missoulians to help with the planning process indicated that Missoulians are concerned with crime, traffic jams, open space, and air and water quality. What are your constituents telling you are the major issues facing Missoula? And this time we'll begin with Mr. Sponseller.
I did an informal poll this spring when I announced my candidacy in my ward, and the constituents of Ward 6 consistently replied or responded in the poll that I did that clean air and clean water and issues concerning growth were their number one concerns today in Missoula. I think that people live here because we have clean air and clean water, and this town has a small town feel, and it's a comfortable place to live, and I think people are very concerned about maintaining that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, what issues are your constituents worried about?
My constituents basically told me, first of all, try to keep our taxes down. Second of all, pay attention to us. And third, that they were hurting and they needed help.
Thank you. Ward 5, Mr. Morgan, what are your constituents telling you?
Well, a lovely number of people said, I love Missoula, I wouldn't live anyplace else. That was always a pleasure to run into that. In the way of problems, we have taxes are frequently mentioned as hurting, management of growth frequently mentioned, plowing the streets, and annexation.
Thank you. Mr. Horton?
My constituents were concerned primarily with crime and traffic, as I recall, in quantities. That's why I'm serving on the Anti-Graffiti Task Force to help deal with crime, and why I worked hard to find a way to fund the completion of North Reserve without the gas tax increase.
Thank you. Now Ward 4, Mr. Charney, what are your constituents concerned about?
They fall in three areas: clean air and water, growth management, and crime, especially the increased usage of drugs and gangs into Missoula. No time yet? Well, those are the three items, so I'll just quit early and give some more.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Anderson?
As I've walked around the ward, my constituents seem to be quite concerned about the increasing cost of government and the increasing tax burden on their individual properties. So that's one of the main concerns that my constituents have. They're also concerned about growth and crime, and also concerned about the environment and water quality, and that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Ms. LaCour, in Ward 1, what are your constituents telling you they're concerned about?
Well, we have been working for several years now with the same issues. One of the big issues in Ward 1 are taxes, the cost of infrastructure improvements, the, I guess, the commitment to keep the semi-rural, quality of life in that area, and of course, crime. Thanks.
And Ms. Herbick?
The people I've talked to are worried about affordable housing, particularly students, low-income people, and seniors, and growth management, traffic, that's related, and that they be involved and listened to. They want to be able to keep their neighborhood atmospheres, and I definitely think they should be listened to. Thank you.
Mr. McGrath, what are the constituents in Ward 2 concerned about?
Well, Ward 2 contains a variety of different neighborhoods, but it absolutely contains the two poorest neighborhoods in town. That is to say, the neighborhoods which have the lowest median income. And affordable housing was absolutely at the top of the list of concerns, came up over and over again, though a whole bunch of other kinds of things around traffic and crime and accessibility, both in terms of getting places and in terms of communicating with the local officials and that sort of thing, were all very important to those people. Thanks.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Gingerelli.
Well, I feel very fortunate to feel very close to the concerns of the Ward 3 residents. I believe that growth management is an umbrella for all of the above issues that you mentioned, quality of life issues that include crime and traffic, open space, air and water quality. My constituents are concerned with all of those. They're also concerned with integrity of neighborhoods and overburdening of the school system.
Thank you. We would now like to give the candidates an opportunity to discuss some issues among themselves. During these discussions, each candidate may speak to the issue twice for 30 seconds each time. The issue for this first discussion is housing. Is the lack of affordable housing a problem in Missoula? If so, what solutions would you advocate to address this problem? Yes, Mr. Kelly.
I think building houses closer together would make it less costly. There's also a scheme involved of having impact costs, making the contractor pay for, the developer pay for the costs, and the result with this would be they would pass it on to the individual that bought it, and that would make it even more expensive. I think we can...
Okay, we'd like to hear from someone else. Yes, Ms. Gingerelli.
Yes, affordable housing is clearly a problem in Missoula. It's one that we've been grappling with as a city here for a number of years. As a solution, the Growth Management Task Force, I'm a member of that, is getting very close to proposing some solutions that can directly affect affordable housing. One would be the proposal of a development permit system which would allow for components of affordable housing, components for open space, et cetera, so that if a development does not contain those components, it can be judged accordingly.
Okay, thank you. Oh, all kinds of hands. Let's go over to Mr. Sponseller first.
Thank you. One item that hasn't been mentioned yet is a community land trust. That's a land bank where land is held in trust so that people can build homes minus the cost of the land. And I agree with my opponent that smaller homes on smaller lots is definitely something that we need in Missoula. As well, a performance review system that encourages better urban design is something that we need, and that's something akin to what Ms. Gingerelli mentioned.
Okay, thank you. Ms. LaCour.
One of the things that we're losing sight of here is that the plans that we're working on with growth management do incorporate ways of bringing forth what could be more affordable housing, but with the realities of the infrastructure cost per residence being around $30,000 and a lot costing around $70,000, with our median income, those two costs alone put us over the range. So we need to actively get busy with the growth management to help. Thanks.
I saw Mr. Horton's hand up.
We've been working on this for 4 years, and it's difficult to summarize in 30 seconds or less, but basically clustering helps. We recently reduced the definition of rooming house, boarding house from 6 down to 3. That will help. The Missoula Housing Authority, of course, has several hundred units of subsidized housing, and there's a large waiting list for that housing. The City Council traditionally buys permits for Habitat for Humanity housing, and I'll buy them for anybody else that wants to build free houses.
Okay. I saw Ms. Herbig's hand.
I think the family designation ordinance ought to be changed. People need to share houses in our situation with the high cost of housing. Seniors, students, and low-income people are desperately in need of housing, and they should be able to share. In New Mexico, infill is encouraged, and developers are actually remunerated if they will you do some infill developing. And one instance of a good situation is the Palace Hotel, where there are a lot of apartments, and across the street is the import shop that could be developed.
Mr. Anderson?
I think with the issue of affordable housing, people have to be made aware that it's not a quick fix solution. A construction project, the ones that are on the planning board right now are going to be taking a year to 18 months to develop. So I don't see a very quick solution to any of these affordable housing problems. And I think the solution lies not only within the city itself, but outside the city and the bedroom communities around here, trying to develop affordable housing in those areas as well to help satisfy the demand.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
A number of these ideas are really good. I just want to throw in a couple of things that people haven't mentioned. One is the other half of the affordability equation is people's living wages and the job situation in Missoula. And the other, another key component, especially for parts of the town, is rents. And I think we need to look at tenants' rights and rent situation and things like that. Thanks.
And Mr. Charney?
Yeah, I was going to mention before Jim did about the other half of the problem is the income. And there is a petition circulating around the state now, sponsored by the labor movement, to raise the minimum wage, to put it out for a vote of the people by initiative. And I would urge the people of Missoula to support that, as well as the other good ideas that have been presented here.
Okay, we haven't heard from Mr. Morgan yet. Go ahead.
Should note that the city is not really in the business of building affordable housing, but that we're very fortunate in Missoula to have a large number of very active, dedicated groups, quasi-governmental or non-governmental, who are working on this problem that the city can partner with. And I think that's one of the most promising things about the situation as it exists now. And I would mention, just for examples, the Montana People's Action, WORD, the Missoula Housing Authority, several others that I haven't time to mention.
And I notice Mr. Sponseller would like to speak again.
Just like to say real quickly that I'd like to support, once I'm on the council, I'd like to support a mixed housing policy throughout the city so that different types of housing are blended throughout our community, providing different types of housing stock to different economic strata.
Ms. Herbig?
Yes, I'd like to see some people getting together, like the Landlords Association and people needing housing or renting, get together and air their complaints. They both groups have legitimate complaints, and it should be worked out between the two groups. And if the landlords cannot police themselves as far as gouging rent controls, then we might have to think about some kind of control for rent. Thank you.
Mr. Kelly?
I'd like to comment on that. I have experience with New York, and what caused the slums in New York was actually the freeze which took place during the Second World War. And I think that unless the landlord, and I've been a landlord, can pass on the costs as they come, I think he's going to abandon the property, and I think they'll go out of the landlord business.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
I'd just like to make a comment regarding affordable housing. I think we have to do a better job of letting people know that are coming into Missoula what the situation is. I think the Chamber of Commerce and other contact groups around the city need to let people know that we have a very low vacancy rate, what the wages are, what the average median housing cost is, to make those people aware. We do a very good job of promoting Montana as a place to come and visit, but I think we have to make them aware if they come to live here what they're up against.
Yes, Mr. Charney?
One method we used in Juneau, Alaska years ago was working with the tax foreclosed property. We had a lot of homes that did not meet code, and they were eventually abandoned and let go for taxes. And we worked with developers where the city raised the property, demolished all the buildings on there, and worked with the developer to come in and infill and build new low-rent housing on those tax foreclosed properties.
Okay, yes, Mr. McGrath.
Oh, another element that hasn't been mentioned yet that I think we ought to mention is the people who have no houses at all. And currently, Missoula is sort of in a situation where it's against the law to be homeless. There isn't really any place for you if you don't have a house. And I think we need to take steps to deal with that.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to our first question from our audience. The candidates will each have 30 seconds to respond to this question. What are your specific solutions for the increasing problem with transients? Not poor families willing to work and abide by the laws of the city, but those who intimidate citizens for money, sleep on city property, drink and relieve themselves in public. And we will begin with Ms. Gingerelli.
Well, that's a loaded question. There are lots of things involved in this question. Certainly human rights comes to my mind immediately, and I want to be sure that whatever the city does with relationship to dealing with transients or homeless people, that we do it with dignity and be very careful about treating people with dignity. I think that the laws that are on the books now deal fairly well with that. We may have some changes to make if the council feels that that's the case, but I think the police have done a pretty good job of being sensitive.
Okay, thank you. Next we'll go to Mr. McGrath.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Chris on that. A lot of the problems mentioned are currently illegal, and we already sort of a way of dealing with that. I'm pleased to read in the newspaper that the Chamber of Commerce is looking at something that some of my supporters and myself have been talking about in terms of coming up with an area that's designated for people who don't have houses to be at. One person I talked to on the campaign trail said, gee, I was walking down by the park and there was a homeless person that came up and confronted me, and when I lived in Seattle, that didn't happen. I never met anybody that was on the street, and then he stopped and said, yeah, but that's a good thing about Missoula.
Thank you. Ms. Herbig.
I think we do have a problem with transients, and I'm very happy to see that the Chamber of Commerce is holding some seminars in order to deal with it. For one thing, a lot of the problems come when the transients start drinking, and I think the Tavern Association needs to help the Chamber in finding some kind of solution to this ongoing problem. Whenever the transients are affecting the rights and happiness of other people, then something needs to be done. They do have a right, and I do think they need to have some place where they can live.
Thank you. Ms. LaCour.
Well, living in an area where we have many of the transients as neighbors, I feel that it is a right to feel comfortable in your own area. The transients also have rights, and they have the right to receive dignity, and I have witnessed that with our law enforcement department. I don't have the answers. I know that putting them into a park or putting them into a cage or whatever we want to do with them is not really in their best interest, nor in ours.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Kelly in Ward 6.
I think the police are doing a fairly good job of picking them up. However, one thing we should just distinguish between are the transients and the homeless, because they're different. Homeless can include families as well. I think we should set aside an area where they would be separated from protected and separated from the police, where they could go from the ordinary citizen and where they can put up a tent if necessary. My kids could put up tents in their backyard, and I see no reason why they could not put up tents themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sponseller.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with several of the candidates' opinions here tonight about an area provided with appropriate facilities to give people a place to go. I think that's an appropriate thing to do. I think that we need to enforce the ordinances that we have on the books in terms of disorderly conduct and harassment and those sort of things, and enforce the ordinances we have rather than create more. Thank you.
Thank you. And in Ward 5, Mr. Horton.
Recently, we've had confrontations between transients and elder people along the riverfront trails. They approached the council to offer them relief in some way. What we've done, we've looked at various parks in which liquor will be prohibited, others in which it will be regulated, others in which it will be allowed under permit only. Before that, about a year and a half ago, we had a problem with people threatening citizens with knives when they wouldn't give them money in the parks. I represent the people, not the transients.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
I've volunteered extensively at Poverello and have a very strong sense of the terrible plight that many of the transients face. In terms of solutions, I'm afraid I don't have anything to add to what's already been said by others this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I would encourage enforcing the laws on the books and doing that in a fair and just manner. I'm not quite convinced that we need to provide a place for the transients for any type of a permanent home. I think if there's a temporary facility, that's fine, but we can't just encourage more people to come without a home and thinking they're going to stay here forever.
Mr. Charney.
Yeah, there have been transients recently killed in Whitefish, Kalispell, and I think dignity is the keystone here, and that they should be treated with dignity and with safety, their safety primary. I agree with Mr. Kelly that there are two types: the families, the homeless. Those are special needs, as for the transients that come here as individuals.
Thank you. Before we go on to our next discussion segment, I'd like to remind our viewing audience that they can call in with their questions. The number is 523-4640. It's important that you have a question that we can direct at all candidates, not directed at an individual candidate. I've got quite a few questions up here that are aimed at individuals, and we want general questions that all of the candidates can address. We'd now like to go to the second discussion section. Again, each candidate will have 2 opportunities to respond, 30 seconds each time. And this dialogue, we'd like to focus on city government reform. These past few months, the Missoula City Government Review Commission has been looking at ways to reform city government. How do you think city government should be reformed? Ms. LaCour?
I've been watching. I've been a faithful participant on the television of that process taking place. I would encourage everyone else to be involved with it as well. The Local Government Review Commission needs to hear from all of us. What I would propose is that some of the things that are being looked at now should be encouraged. One is neighborhood councils. The Missoula Neighborhood Network is a start in that direction. So we're starting towards that government reform, getting government to respond to the neighbors and the neighbors to respond to government.
Thank you. Ms. Gingerelli?
Thank you. I currently have a referral to the Committee of the Whole in the Council to discuss this issue so that the Council can give the Local Government Study Commission some feedback. We have not yet really officially done that. My views on this are that I think the mayor form of government versus a city manager makes more sense because of accountability to the public. I feel an elected official provides that much better. Likewise, I feel the 12-member council is not broken. We may have some issues occasionally with cumbersome communication, but I really feel that 2 people per ward allows for a choice better than anything else.
Thank you. Mr. Charney?
I had the pleasure of as being the first person to testify before the Local Study Commission at their first public hearing. A couple of items that I want to mention is I think that it's essential that Missoula should consider a home rule charter rather than be governed 100% out of Helena. I think people here in Missoula are intelligent enough to come up with a charter that then we can hopefully govern ourselves. I think what I testified before the commission was for an area-wide vote on city council, although with a residency requirement so that neighborhoods can be representative.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Anderson, I think you had your hands up.
I would echo Mr. Charney's comments regarding a charter for Missoula. I do think we need to have powers that we can enact here at the local level without having to get permission from Helena. I do think that a city manager form of government would provide a very stable form of government, and I think that as incumbents come and go and the political scene changes, the city manager provides continuity to an increasingly complex form of government. I also think that we could probably reduce the size of council and function quite efficiently with a reduced size.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
I agree with some of what's been said. I agree with what Perry said about neighborhood councils. I think it's important to think about what is broken and what isn't broken, and I agree with Chris. I don't think the ward system is broken. I think one of the most important things that we have in Missoula under the current system is the closeness and accessibility between council members and their constituents, and we're pushing the limit on that. If we go to a citywide vote, we increase the cost, we increase the accessibility. If we reduce the number of council members, the same thing happens. So I think what people are saying is broken is the accessibility, not anything else.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Mr. Horton?
I agree with Jim on that. I think, however, it would be a mistake to reduce the size of the council when you consider that each ward represents about 7,400 people, and a good many of those people have something on their mind at any given time. I generally consider that I'm available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that usually doesn't cover it.
Ms. Herbig?
In addition to having the 12 members, I would agree that that is the way to go. We have to consider absenteeism. If you have some absenteeism, you could end up with 3 or 4 people on the council. The other thing is a mayor would have a lot more trouble controlling 12 people versus the 6. And as far as the mayor, mayor versus city manager, we tried the city manager routine a couple times and it just didn't work. Also, I object to the council having the ability to appoint the city manager.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan?
In the interest of building neighborhoods, I'd like to see us have 12 council members in 12 wards. I've just walked every street in my ward, and it's a lovely big ward, very big ward. As Curtis says, it's hard to keep in touch with everybody. I'd like to see it split in half. Then I think I really could know a significant number of people on each street. The trouble would be picking which half.
Mr. Sponseller?
Well, I'd like to see an at-large component on the council. I'm not sure what the size of the council should be, but I think an at-large component of the council would more effectively address the broad-based, larger issues that are facing the city right now.
Let's go over to Mr. McGrath again.
Well, I disagree with Andy on that one. I haven't noticed the council members being unable to look at community-wide issues on the most of the time. And with the 12-member councils we've had, no particular member or even a particular ward can in any way really dominate. And sometimes I hear the word sort of senatorial used in a sort of at-large versus districted, and I haven't noticed in my experience in politics that senators being necessarily that much better than congressmen.
Mr. Charney?
My experience has shown me that ruling by committee is a mistake. And no matter if you go a mayor or a city manager, you need a strong executive. And the council should refrain itself from setting executive authority and be only the policy makers.
Let's go with Mr. Kelly.
I basically think that if something isn't broken, I don't think we should fix it.
Thank you. Let's go back over to Ms. LaCour.
I support what Larry Anderson has said about the city manager. In one of our research projects, we researched a town or a city that had a population of 85,000 with a city manager, 7 council people, and a mayoral position that was more public relation oriented. The city ran extremely effective, and the city manager was able to take care of that. But there again, I need to promote the neighborhood council, because we have seen here in Missoula what neighbors working together can do.
Thank you. Mr. Horton.
I've gone to a number of cities similar to Missoula, university towns about the same size, isolated from other larger metropolitan areas, at my own time expense, by the way. And generally, they consider that at-large councils don't work. Personally, I would like to see government in Missoula have self-government powers, whereby we can do whatever the state doesn't tell us we cannot do. Currently, we can only do what the state tells us specifically that we can do, and there are major differences.
Thank you. Let's go with Mr. Anderson.
I'd just like to reiterate that the major Class 1 cities in Montana, the majority of those do all have city manager positions. They do function quite well. Many of those have smaller councils with larger populations in Missoula, and again, function quite well.
Ms. Gingerelli?
I also feel that absenteeism is a problem. I've just recently written a statement about this to the Local Government Study Commission. We have 12 people. Sometimes during the summer, we barely make a quorum. If we had 6, we could be in serious trouble. Even though a quorum would be less people, I think we could be in trouble with that. I strongly support home rule or a charter as far as getting local control, and I support neighborhood councils. I think that's an excellent idea. If the Local Government Study Commission does want to go to a different number, I would advocate combining wards 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 5 and 6, and still having 2 representatives per ward, but I still prefer 12.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on to our next question from our audience, and the candidates will have 30 seconds to respond to this question. Chief of Police Pete Lawrenson, in an October 26th letter to the editor, stated that, quote, "We do have a substantial increase in violence among our young people. That is a community problem, not simply a law enforcement problem," close quote. How do you respond to this statement? And if you agree, how should the city respond? We'll begin this time with Mr. Charney.
I agree with the statement, and all I can say is that we have to support our police in dealing with this problem. If the police chief recommends new legislation, so be it. We should take a look at it. If he doesn't, if he thinks he can handle it with more staff or more concentrated effort, then we should support him in that way.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson.
I agree with Mert's comments regarding what the police chief proposes. I also think as parents we need to be aware of what our children are doing, and I think we have to be very supportive of those activities that involve the children and young folks in our community. I think in the neighborhoods we have to be vigilant and watching out what's going on there, and if we see a problem, I think we have to try and correct it then rather than let it become bigger.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
I agree that I want to help the police to receive the training that they want and need to treat this sort of violence in a humane and caring way. I think we need also to find out what it is that is causing our youth to arm themselves increasingly at this point, and hope that we can supply them some of their answers to those needs in constructive ways in the community rather than in the destructive ways that are working now. I work with the Alternatives to Violence Project, giving workshops on helping people to deal with violence, and I hope that will help me in my work.
Thank you. Mr. Horton?
I consider it my job on the council to give the police the tools they need to do their job, both in manpower units, special equipment. We currently have 2 units out on any given evening designated specifically for youth violence and gangs. We have to deal with graffiti if we're going to keep gangs under control. Graffiti is the mark that the gangs make when they come into the community that essentially says they are here. All the graffiti you see around town is new graffiti. The Anti-Graffiti Task Force has been very effective in taking care of the graffiti.
Thank you. Now, Ward 6, Mr. Sponseller, how do you respond to the Chief of Police's comments?
Well, I agree that we have a problem with violence in Missoula. I support the police and their efforts, and I support whatever we can do to help them do their job. One of the things that I think we need to do is look at planning better community or better neighborhoods. I think the social structure that's created by the way our neighborhoods are built is very, very important in regards to what youth are doing and where they're at. The other thing that I'm interested in is community policing, getting our police force connected more with the neighborhoods.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly?
I think we should distinguish between the kids that are on the way to the joint and the kids that are just raising a little cane. Now, I grew up without a father, and many kids are today the same thing. And actually, I was raised by the police department and my mother of the city of Great Falls. So give them a chance. They're not bad, most of them. They just don't know any better, a lot of them. And some are headed for prison. And that's where they're going to go. It's just that simple.
Thank you. Over to the other side, Ms. Gigerelli.
I feel that the city of Missoula and actually the county of Missoula have 2 of the finest law enforcement officers in charge in the state. Both Pete Lawrenson and Doug Chase do an excellent job. They're sensitive to people, they're sensitive to youth, and I support them completely. I agree with President Clinton on this one that TV violence and media and film violence is a major contributor to what we're seeing today, and even though I'm not in favor of censorship in a great degree, I really think we ought to be more sensitive to what we're showing our children and exposing them to, and I would agree with Mr. Anderson that we need to make sure our recreation is always there in Missoula and encourage that.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath.
I've had the privilege of being asked already to serve, even though I'm not an incumbent, as I pointed out, and moderate several meetings on the north side that have centered around youth violence and fear of gang activity and fear of police intrusion and so on. And one of the things that came up with that is the lack of things to do if you're a young person, especially if you're a low-income young person. And we're now talking about the need for a youth-run rec center. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. LaCour.
Boy, we do have, Chris, I think we have one of the finest law enforcement departments that anyone could ever have, but they're only one department, and I have to go back to what Larry says again, and also Chris. The parental involvement at home and in school can make a difference. Neighborhood watch programs can make a difference. Neighborhood policing, or if we want to use that, get to know your neighbors, know their comings and goings. That helps break down crime. Get involved with your neighborhood.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Herbig.
And to support the neighborhoods, I think we need to watch how we develop them to make sure that they're neighborhoods that people can get to know each other, be conducive to that. In my walking around the ward, I found an awful lot of children home alone from about 3 on, and I think that they're more apt to get in trouble. growth has caused problem in that we need more policemen. They're doing a fine job, but I think they need to have more policemen because of our growth. And the information sessions, I think, are excellent because the more informed people are, the less the problem.
Thank you. Now we'd like to move to our third discussion period, and this time we'd like to know the candidates' views on city services. What services should city government provide its citizens? What services should developers provide? And what should individuals provide? And this time we'll start where we ended off with Lois Herbig.
That's a pretty big question, and it isn't one that came out in our packet, so it's going to be a little hard to, you may even have to repeat some of the question. By the time you repeat it, my time will probably be up. But I think the community does need to get involved with just about everything in the city. They can't expect to have every service provided to them. However, the city needs to be upfront as to what services are going to be provided, and particularly in annexation cases. I think oftentimes people don't know what they're going to get if they are annexed into the city.
I apologize that this is a discussion and I called on you. I apologize. I have a lot of questions up here. So this is an open discussion period, and I do apologize for calling on you. So who would like to speak? Ms. Gingerelli.
Well, you know, I think there are clearly some real specific services that all citizens expect from tax dollars, and those begin with public safety issues like police, fire, certainly emergency medical services. When you call 911, you want to know that you're going to get fast response from both the police and the fire and the EMTs. Certainly streets are services, and any kind of engineering services are clearly up there for tax dollars, but we can do more. Growth management is a good example of something that is essential and critical for the future of the city and the county, and we need to fund that.
Thank you. Ms. LaCour.
This is probably more of an issue for Ward 1 people right at this time. We were annexed in 1989, and there's still much discussion as to what services we want, what services we should have. This is going to be an issue that we're going to be dealing with throughout the next decade as we annex other areas. What are we going to do with the urbanized area, or the semi-rural or rural areas as we annex? And it is something that needs to be discussed with the community. Many of the residents that are annexed are angry because they have not been given the facts.
Thank you. Let's go over to Mr. Anderson.
I think we need to concentrate as a city on providing the basics of public safety, sewer, streets, those basic services. And I agree with Perry, and newly annexed areas and areas that will be annexed in the future, until we can provide those citizens with that basic level of services. I don't think we as a city government need to be taking on more and more things. I think we have to do what the city can do and do that well.
Thank you. Let's go over to Mr. McGrath.
I think we need to extend the idea of what the public infrastructure is to include things like biological and ecological systems. I think open space is a real key part of the infrastructure of a community, and I think the larger and larger function in government as we continue will be planning for community development, because then we can decide, as Perry has suggested, what services we do want and how they're going to be provided and who's going to provide them, and but we don't have to bring people in who have already been developed in a particular way that doesn't meet the needs.
Mr. Horton?
I think if you start from the premise that government should provide services that individuals cannot provide for themselves, then the question comes to what has sufficient value to provide a tax base to provide those services. In other words, there has to be a cost-benefit ratio. Is the benefit provided of sufficient value to justify the cost? And we deal with that regularly in the Public Services Committee.
Thank you. Mr. Charney?
I think besides what's been talked about regarding essential services for the people, I think the one thing that the city owes its people is an economic base as well. And that's an economic development policy of the city to go out and attract the right kind of businesses that will do business here in Missoula and will pay sufficient wages to the workers of Missoula. I think that's one of the essential things that a city government must do in providing tax stability for those businesses and an economic base for the business community to come into the city.
Thank you. Ms. LaGourigan?
One thing that I find somewhat humorous as we're talking here, we refer to the city as a department, and we need to remember that we are the city. The residents are the city. The elected officials and hired officials are the people we are hiring and electing to represent our needs. And that goes back to the services. What is it that we can afford, and what is it that we actually need, and have the departments be receptive to our voices, which maybe needs to be done more actively.
Thank you. Any other comments on what services the city government should provide and what should be provided by individuals or developers? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to another question from our audience, and again, the candidates will have about 30 seconds to respond to this. I have two questions that are very similar. I'm going to sort of combine them here. Is the City Council becoming so polarized on certain issues that members have lost the ability to listen, empathize, and compromise? And what suggestions do you have to encourage council collegiality? And this time, we will begin with you, Mr. Horton.
Yes. There are some issues that the council's becoming polarized on, and that comes from a basic difference in perspective about how the taxpayers' money should be spent freely and loosely or frugally. As a sociology major, that was the second part of that question was one of my specialties. Unfortunately, some of the council members care not to participate in things which would lighten up the issues or the tension around the issues, and so as a result of that, we've had to keep a lot of things very businesslike.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Not having participated in the council deliberations in the past, I can't speak except from having watched the council meetings. I don't think of structural changes for the difficulties that exist, that Curtis says exists, and that I think I see, unless possibly the arrangement of these desks might be manipulated in some way. But beyond that, I think it's largely a matter of personal tact in speaking to each other, both in council and out of council.
Thank you. We'll go to Ward 4 now. Mr. Anderson?
I think that since we are elected by wards, we're responsible to the people that elected us, and each ward has its own set of issues, I think, that it wants presented and represented by those council representatives. I think they can do that in a manner that is civil and is presented in a way to try to reach a conclusion and come to agreement rather than being uncivil about it.
Thank you. Mr. Charney?
Yeah, I've noticed some polarization, and I think my experience as state budget director will help in that regard, in that we had to look at issues, statewide issues and municipal issues, rather an alternative list of solutions, not just the extremes, the yes or the no. We would analyze an issue and come up with 6 or 7 or a dozen possible answers that people could, legislators and so forth, could look at and reach some kind of a compromise in the middle rather than the extremes.
Thank you. Now over to Ward 1 and Ms. Herbig. This is really a question this time. Is the council becoming too polarized, and what can we do to encourage council collegiality?
It would appear that there is a lot of polarization. I get to wondering how much the TV has added to this, and maybe people want to put on a show more than thinking about what the business is at hand. Also, I think that there needs to be more respect between the members. When you have inflammatory statements made by one or another person, it sort of sets the tone for things happening in the future. And I think also they need to be more respectful to the public, and the public needs to be more respectful to the council. That could be arranged through the Rules Committee.
Thank you. Ms. LaCour?
Some good thoughts on that. Having been in front of the council many, many times over the years, I feel that one of the things the council needs to remember is that when we're sitting at the desk, we're representing a wide array of personalities, not just the ones that we want to represent, but we have to be real about the fact that there's several interests in our wards and all need to be heard. And I think that it isn't that difficult to show respect and have respect given back.
Thank you. Mr. McGrath?
One thing that we're going to immediately do is have a substantially new city council. And one thing that will do is have a whole bunch of different personalities and people who haven't established a set of relationships, good, bad, and ugly, and I think that'll help. On the other hand, I'm not sure that, I agree with Curtis, and that's maybe a sign of how you can get along. I've agreed with Curtis several times tonight, but we will be as polarized as on the council as we are in the community. The city council currently every week passes a lengthy list of things called the consent agenda that nobody disagrees with at all, and they save all their time for what they consider the big issues, which are the ones in which they have fundamental disagreements, and that's a good thing.
Thank you, Mr. McGrath. Ms. Gingerelli?
Well, I may be the eternal optimist, but I don't mind conflict at all. I think that disparity on certain issues is the nature of diverse representation. In terms of polarization, it's impossible not to be polarized at times when you have different opinions, and I really feel we always work it out. As far as what we can do to encourage collegiality, one of the specific things that we've started doing last year was to have strategic planning sessions with the council. Even the committee of the whole process has helped us get together more as a whole body and communicate. So I think we're moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go over to Ward 6. Mr. Kelly, what can be done to encourage collegiality?
Well, I've never been on the council, and I've only attended a few meetings, but I've never seen anyone act like anything other than a gentleman and a lady when I've been here, so maybe I've missed something.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Sponseller?
Thank you. Couple of things. I think that the way we do business here in the city of Missoula, and particularly on the council, needs some attention. I believe that if we spent more time on policy development and developed a better sense of focus on issues, we wouldn't spend so much time in contentious debate. I think just generally speaking, we need an efficient business-like problem-solving process, and last of all, I think we need to have respect. Council has to be a role model for the community so that community discussion and cooperation is furthered.
Thank you. This will be our final question for the night, and I thank the many people who have written questions to us. I wish we had enough time to ask all of them, but we don't. There are quite a few here. So for our final question, I'd like each candidate to take 30 seconds to answer. And the question is, the Montana Constitution guarantees its citizens a healthful environment. What are the greatest threats to Missoula's healthful environment? And this time we will begin with Ward 2 and Mr. McGrath.
Thanks. The two greatest immediate threats to a healthful environment in the community are obviously water quality, because we're sitting on top of a single source aquifer, and the other is air quality. We've been in non-attainment for years, which means our air is not clean enough technically to breathe. And as we go along and the community continues to grow, those concerns will get worse. The number one problem with air pollution right now, since we've done some things about wood smoke, is auto exhaust.
Thank you. Ms. LaCour from Ward 1.
Well, we need to add with water quality, which is an issue that I've been actively working on for several years, but we need to add water quantity. As we grow, We need to be receptive to the idea that the water is not an endless supply, and we need to add that to our list. We need to come up with constructive ways to mitigate water contamination and to assist with the Tri-State Implementation Council. The other one is we should actively look at auto emission testing because the cars aren't going away.
Thank you. And Ms. Herbick?
I would agree with the two foregoing statements, but in addition to that, each person in the nation contributes 4 pounds of garbage a day, and I think something should be done to encourage people to do more recycling, and I wish that BFI would charge per can for garbage instead of a flat fee, and therefore encouraging people to do more with their garbage, more recycling done. And that goes also for the towns that ship garbage in.
Thank you. Mr. Sponseller in Ward 6, what are the greatest threats to Missoula's healthful environment?
I think that the greatest threats to the environment here are irresponsible development, but I think it's also equally the responsibility of individual citizens to be accountable for their habits, and it's something that I'm personally trying to do a better job of. Ward 6 constituents tell me that clean air and clean water are extremely important to them, and I think that that's something that deserves our continued focus.
Thank you. And Mr. Kelly?
I think when it comes to the environment, we must be reasonable about the same. There are some things about the environment about which we can do nothing, and there are other things which we can do things about. For example, it would be this valley has long been known as a valley of smokes, and it is going to be that way. Upon the other hand, I think we can do things about our water. It depends entirely on what the subject is.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Ward 5 and Mr. Morgan.
I agree entirely with the need for our protecting the air and the water, but I want to add that another threat to the health of Missoulians is violence, which we were discussing some time back. We were talking about youth violence primarily last time. There's also high prevalence here, as in other communities, of family violence. Not very much talked about, but something that I think we should contribute in every possible way to diminishing.
Thank you. And Mr. Horton?
In relation to the physical environment, the air and water, of course, in about 15 months we'll have a new reduced particulate study on the ground, which will give us information we need to formulate new ordinances. The Water Quality District is on a roll. We have monitoring wells being drilled now so we can know what it is we're dealing with and where those problems are. Visible emissions ordinance is on the books for vehicles, smoking vehicles. It has yet to be enforced, and I agree that probably emotional health should be considered, and people have a right to be free from fear in their community.
Thank you. On to Ward 4. Mr. Charney, what are the greatest threats to Missoula's healthful environment?
Well, I have to agree with water and air, and one thing that we can do about it is that we need clean industry to come into Missoula, high-tech, et cetera, industries into the city. I was read with amazement the article in the Missoulian here the other day about graduates of the University of Montana have to go out of state to get jobs. Here we have a four-year college, 4-year degrees, and they can't find jobs, and we need clean industry here in Missoula, and we should, so that graduates of our university can stay here.
Thank you. Mr. Anderson?
I think I would like to echo Perry's comments on auto emissions. I think we should try to get some of the CMAQ money available to help start a pilot program to institute mandatory auto emissions. I think that would help the air quality not only at Malfunction Junction but throughout the county. And I think that with some of that money that was left over when we solved that problem, then we could do some of the other things that would improve the mental health of the citizens of Missoula.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Gingerelli.
Well, I don't think there's any debate about the two environmental health threats being air and water quality, and I wouldn't disagree with any of the comments. However, I'd like to suggest something else. I think our two greatest threats to a healthful environment are complacency by citizens and inaction by our health agencies, because truly there's no debate on what the problems are, but unless citizens keep paying attention and unless our health agencies keep working hard on it, we're going to be right where we are.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the discussion and question portion of the forum. We would now like each candidate to make a 1-minute closing comment. We will begin with Mr. Sponseller from Ward 6. So go ahead, Mr. Sponseller.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight. I'd just like to say that I think Missoula is a wonderful community, and I really enjoy living here, and I'm eager to serve the constituents of Ward 6. I think that Ward 6 is a particularly vibrant place in the city, and I think it has livable neighborhoods, and one of my priorities is to enhance and maintain the livability of the neighborhoods in Ward 6, and as well help to guide Missoula's future in a good way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly.
The gentleman at the end, I forget your name, brought up a subject which is actually dear to my heart. I think we should try to encourage the headquarters and the administrative sections of corporations to come in here. We would have uses for our students and our graduates. If they did so, we would have a flowering of culture. We would have an artisanship. And I mentioned this in one of the articles in the paper. It's possible. It's going on now. I personally know a man who controls most of the lumber of Los Angeles. And he lives here in Missoula and communicates with his business by computer and by... We don't need the smokestacks, but we can certainly use the administration, and that'll clean our air. It'll give jobs to our young students, and it'll make an education worth something rather than a liability.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. From Ward 5, Mr. Morgan.
I'd like to take this occasion near the end of the campaign to say thanks to 50 individuals who have volunteered time and work in my campaign, to say thanks to 65 people who have given money to help me make myself known in the community, to 135 plus families who've offered to have Morgan for Council signs in their yards. I'm very grateful. I think I can live up to their faith. I think my qualifications, which I've publicized widely in Ward 5, will serve me well in working on the council and allowing me to be a good public servant. I want to say finally, I want this very much. I'm really looking forward to working hard and long for the people of Ward 5 and the people of Missoula.
Thank you. Mr. Horton, closing comments.
Since this is about elections and Politico time, I have an election and Politico type closing comment. Since I don't know my opponent, I presume him to be an honorable man. However, some of the people working on his behalf and organizing a massive smear campaign against me are not, and I would request that he rein those people in.
Thank you. From Ward 4, Mr. Charney.
One question didn't come up tonight, which I mentioned in my opening remark that was my strong forte, and that's budgets. And so I'd like to point out that I'd like to change the way that people discuss and deal with city budgets if I get elected to the council. And let's take an example like fire or ambulance service, for example. And just offhand, you could have 3 different budgets. You could have, and it all resolves down to how fast does the public want average response time to be for a fire or for an ambulance. You want 1 hour, that's one budget. You want 30 minutes response time on the average, that's the second budget. Or do you want 5 minutes, that's the third budget. And I think that's the kind of budgets that have to be presented to the people, and the people make the choice of what kind of response do they want in all of the areas of city government, rather than talking about strictly the dollars and the millage.
Okay, we'll move over to the other side of the room now and to the candidates in Ward 1. These are closing comments. Oh. It's getting late. Thank you. All right, Mr. Anderson, your closing comments.
I think despite the fact that many university graduates leave the area, there are many of us here represented tonight, myself included. I would just like to say and thank the people in Ward 4 for their support of my campaign. I'd like to say that I feel that I can represent the business people in this community that have a lot to offer. And I think with my background in local government here in Missoula, that'll be a very quick study on the issues that are facing Missoula today and in the future. I think we have to be a body that sets policy. I don't think we can get involved in the minutiae of managing government. We hire good people here as city employees. Let's let them do the work. Let's try to look down the road and see what Missoula should be like in the future. I want to be a part of that. I would like to be sitting in this chair in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for indulging me. And now we'll go to Ward 1. And Perry LaCour, your closing comments.
The position of city council, it's just not to be taken lightly at all. I see it as a very serious commitment to the people. And I have always been seriously committed to having the people be heard. One of the reasons that I became active in the first place is that I did not feel that our city departments were being responsive to the needs of the residents and to the pleas of the residents, and that's something that I want to carry forward. I co-founded and am currently president of the Rattlesnake Homeowners, and that group was formed to be heard. I'm president of the Missoula Neighborhood Network. Our purpose is to be heard as neighbors, and the neighbors are what make the community. As far as listening, I've been listening, and I have been responding. When we couldn't get to the council or to the others, we developed the early notification policy, allowing us to get involved in the early planning stages. We've done a lot of things, and we need to keep going forward as a community.
Thank you. And Lois Herbig, also from Ward 1.
When I was on the council before, I worked to get different bodies cooperating to solve some of the problems, and I would continue that for job seeking and development. The university could be working with the city and the job service, the Chamber of Commerce, the unions, Missoula Public Schools, in order to make sure there's proper training and to qualify people for the high-tech jobs. And also, I would also like to involve the people early on in the neighborhood, and I have a plan for doing that. That is reaching key people on a regular basis from different parts of the ward to find out what's going on in the ward, what they see the problems are, and let them know what the city is doing, so that they really do feel involved, and I think it would do away with a lot of the apathy.
Thank you. Ward 2, Mr. McGrath.
Thanks. I want to thank the League for putting on this forum. I had the pleasure of participating in the primary campaign, in a very clean campaign where I talked about what I thought and what the ideas that we supported were about, and didn't make any kind of negative attacks on my opponents, and I think that's a good way to run a campaign. We also declared and kept to a voluntary spending cap on our campaign. I think that's an important reform. We need to get money out of politics as much as possible. It forces you to do a real campaign where you get out on the street and walk to people, walk around to their houses, listen to them, rather than just simply send them something in the mail or on a TV ad or whatever. And I thought that was very good. And I also filed my campaign reports, and my understanding is that all the Democratic candidates have filed their campaign reports as required by state law, and I encourage all candidates to be open and above board in these important matters.
Thank you. And Ms. Gingerelli.
I'd also like to thank you, Ms. Maxon, and Sarah Buzzi and the League for sponsoring this. This has been a really well-organized forum. I appreciate it. I feel very privileged to have served for the last 4 years the citizens of Ward 3 and Missoula in general, and I really have enjoyed it. I'll look forward to another 4 years, being that I am unopposed, and I feel very honored to be unopposed. It'll be a very interesting next council. I think we have a lot of expertise in the candidates that we have offered here. This is going to be an excellent council regardless of how it goes. It'll be interesting that there will be only 4 of us who have been here for 4 years or more. So we're going to have a lot of learning process for all of us, and I think it'll be really very excellent. I'll continue to work hard on my favorite issue, which is growth management. I've done a lot of work over the last 4 years in a lot of different areas. Land use planning has certainly been a focus of mine. I will continue to work there and see only good things for the city of Missoula. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this brings us to the end of this City Council Candidates Forum. I'd like to thank the questioners for their contribution to the forum and the candidates for their very thoughtful answers. If your question was not asked, I urge you, if you're in the audience, to approach the candidates and ask them after the forum. I'd also like to thank our co-sponsors, the Missoula League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women. Special thanks to the officials at City Hall for allowing us to use these facilities, and MCAT for broadcasting this forum live. If you missed any portion of the forum and you'd like to see it, it will be rebroadcast on MCAT, November 3rd at 3:30 p.m. and November 5th at 4:30 p.m. November 5th at 4:30 p.m. I'd also like to thank League of Women Voters President Sarah Buzzi and Vice President Gladys Harden for their hard work in organizing the forum. Tuesday is Election Day. Remember to vote. It's your right and your responsibility. On behalf of the Missoula League of Women Voters, I'm Nancy Maxson. Thank you and good evening.